I was the only Black athlete at my high school that qualified for an academic scholarship.
Mm.
Football, baseball, basketball, and track, the four top ones. Because I was raised in a household where my mom uh, introduced me to reading at an early age, and I didn't know how much literacy was going to play a part in
Mm-hmm.
my identity. So I wound up taking the test, and it's the SAT test, and I didn't pass, and I think I missed it by a couple of points. But the thing is, back in the '70s, because I graduated in '73, there was no SAT preparation course. There was no SAT test that you can take to prepare you from. I basically went in and took a test on a certain day, did the best I could, and I didn't pass. But the thing that I really appreciated is that I put my best foot forward and I still accomplished something because I went straight from high school to a Division I basketball team, University of Washington. So, like most of us, sports is part of our story. And I played sports in elementary school, middle school, and high school. But I had made a decision that my playing days were over. Right, I'm 5'9", 180 pounds, and I love to play football. But football players are pretty big. But I'm also a basketball player. So part of my story is at the University of Washington, some friends of mine kept encouraging me to go try out for the junior varsity, right? I said, no, I'm good. I'm good. I said, no, come on down, man. Come on, come on. I said, okay. And Terry, I went down there and I had saw some of these same ball players on TV the year before, right? And
Okay.
just like you said, I saw these guys look bigger than life. But Terry, when I went down there, I said, you know what? These guys aren't that tough. So what I did was I tried it for the JV, made a team, and part of the success story was, and it happens, somebody got hurt on varsity, and so the coach decided to bring someone up. And there was a guy that was on scholarship, and I was a walk on. And because of what he felt my skill sets were, I got chosen for the traveling squad and in the college. Got a chance to play in Pauley Pavilion. Everybody knows that that's the mecca of college basketball. So I thought I had arrived, right? And so I got a chance to play against, I think it was Bill Walton and Gus Williams and some of the other great ball players. So that was a great opportunity for me to see that if I'm willing to put forth the effort, good things will happen. Finished up and got my degree from Antioch College in Seattle campus, and I think it's international social justice. But Terry, I graduated 40 years after I graduated from high school. So I
Mm.
tell people all the time, it's not who finished first or last, it's who finishes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by the time that I got my college degree, I already had a business, which is a travel museum, had a full-time job. So I was pretty much in a position for the next transition, which is what? Being my own boss, being my own entrepreneur. A lot of our children, young adults have a world view of 3 or 4 block radius. So a lot of times you are what you hear or what you see. But as far as having an imagination and being curious, a lot of that sometimes is stifled based on what they're exposed to. So one of the things that my museum, I believe, does, it gives them opportunity to really start seeing themselves through a healthy lens. So my work is really around identity development and self-actualization. Children learn through different modalities, right? My museum, I'm a storyteller. You can touch things and things you can read. It's not a prerequisite to know how to read to learn. So I create a space for all learners. And so back to the beginning of the museum, Mother Africa, where I show STEM, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Add the A, it's STEAM. I show those disciplines coming out of the continent of Africa in terms of math, in terms of metallurgy, in terms of aeronautics. So all of a sudden, the eyes open up. No one's ever shared with them that within them is this greatness. And here's an example of it. Another thing I think is our children are not served in schools. They're not being exposed to subject matter that gets them excited and engage. So my museum not only holds their attention, it gets them to start asking questions and wanting to know more. And so Mother Africa starts with, I have the second section is called American Chattel Slavery, where I have authentic primary resources. It's an actual, I brought these out just for you, Terry. These
Okay.
are, this is for an adult. This is for a young child. These are actual restraints won by our ancestors. And so I shared the story that I learned that we were never slaves, we were enslaved, which is a big difference in terms of consciousness, right? But the other
Right.
piece is they don't teach about the resistance and the resilience of that time period. And so I also brought an item here. Can you hear that? It's called a rattle, runaway collar. So they used to put these on our ancestors, right? Put things on the end, you can hear them, right? So they can always have an idea where we are. What do? We put mud on, brother, and we ran anyway, right? So we resisted every chance we got, man.
Right.
So when I start to share with them that this is not who you are. This is not who you are. This is what was done to you, right? So I put the responsibility back on the other person. So all of a sudden, Black kids can't believe that we were treated so inhumane. Because in a lot of cases, no one ever shares with them the real history in a way for they can start to understand that they have responsibility now, Terry, based on the shoulders that you and I are on. And we have an opportunity to honor them by doing our darn best. I teach Jim Crow. I don't teach civil rights. I teach Jim Crow to help me talk about the racial caste system that came out of the enslavement period. We're from slave codes to Black codes. So they just found another way to process. So the last section is a self-actualization section. So I show actual items, everyday items that we use that were invented by us. Ice cream scoop, the pencil sharpener, the gas mask. So all of a sudden, these students' eyes are open and now they're standing more upright, Terry, because now they have a firm understanding that's this identity piece about who they are and what they can accomplish. They're clearer now about what their role is in terms of being an agent of change. Jim Crow had two things in mind: keeping you from who you are and what you can accomplish.
Welcome to Prepare For Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terry L. Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or rising entrepreneur. This week, we're sitting down with Delbert Richardson, community scholar, second-generation storyteller, and the curator and owner of the national award-winning museum, the Unspoken Truths. Delbert, what's going on, man?
You know, just changing the world.
That's it. Changing the world one day at a time.
One consciousness at a time.
Okay, you're doing great work. And one of the things you said to me, you show up and God shows out.
Yeah. It's taken me a while to get there, but I'm there now.
We want to give people the opportunity to show them how you got there. A lot of people, they see people in the Ring of Honor, the championship banners, and all of the things, the rings that come with all of the success that people have on the field. If we're talking sports or monetary and corporate America, entrepreneurship, whatever it may be, but people don't realize there was a lot of work that people had to put in to get to that place. And today's generation, they have such a microwave mindset. They want it yesterday. They don't want to have to wait. They don't want to have to slow cook to success. They're like, no, I need to be successful by Friday. That's just unrealistic. So with that being said, how did it start for you?
Thank you for asking that. And I would agree about this generation. And one of the things I think that's important for me as an elder is to model, right? And so when you ask me that question, I've got to go back to 1954. That's the year I was born. And if you know anything about history and that date, that was the same year Brown v. Board of Education, which basically meant that I was born in Detroit, but if I was in the South, I would have been told to drink out of a different water fountain than the one I saw. And so just that beginning in the Midwest, I didn't know how I was going to show. I didn't know how I was going to manifest itself in what I do today. Because the other thing about that part of my story, as you can see, I'm a melanated, complected brother. Some would say dark. But we know anything about colorism, there's this unfortunate belief that people that are darker are not as smart. People that are darker are not as, and so a lot of times there's some misunderstandings around color that's prevalent in all cultures. And so the work I've done with Asian, Latino, Latinx, Native American, you name it. And a lot of time, colorism plays a part in terms of value. And so I grew up with this notion of low self-esteem.
I'm sure not just you, a lot of people, not just from the 50s and 60s, but the 90s, the 2000s, and so forth. And I think, in my humble opinion, there are a number of things that reinforce things that in people's mindset that makes them feel as though that they're not as good as, or when you go to try to get that bank loan and you don't get approved, but maybe your friend from another community does, or back in the 60s and even still now, when you go to try to buy a house in a certain neighborhood, for whatever reason, your offer isn't accepted. And there's those subtle reminders, and sometimes not always too subtle, that makes people feel like it's there for me to go. And we don't have enough examples of people who have been able to break through those ceilings, because sad but unfortunately true, a lot of times when people manage to escape those circumstances, they never come back to bring the resources from their new neighborhood to the old neighborhood. And that's why we're all about, celebrating people like you, amplifying Black excellence, because people don't believe what you tell them.
Mm-hmm.
They believe what you show them. And you're truly a brother who, you didn't start where you are present day. You didn't start as this individual who has all of these accomplishments and all of the things that to be your reality. But I'm certain that during that ascend to your destination, were there any hurdles? Were there any kind of things that you had to navigate to mold you into the man that you are today?
Well, absolutely. And let me just share something. You talked about bank loans and so forth. And what happens, in my view, we start to internalize. And this is where that internalized oppression comes in. When we're told so much, no, you're not worth it, we start to believe that sometimes subconsciously. And that's not really healthy. So, part of my story is I was the only Black athlete at my high school that qualified for academic scholarship.
Mm.
Football, baseball, basketball, and track, the four top ones. Because I was raised in a household where my mom uh, introduced me to reading at an early age, and I didn't know how much literacy was going to play a part in my identity. So I wound up taking the test, and it's the SAT test, and I didn't pass, and I think I missed it by a couple of points. But the thing is, back in the 70s, because I graduated in 73, there was no SAT preparation course. There was no SAT test that you can take to prepare you from. I basically went in and took a test on a certain day, did the best I could, and I didn't pass. But the thing that I really appreciated is that I put my best foot forward and I still accomplished something because I went straight from high school to a Division I basketball team, University of Washington. So, like most of us, sports is part of our story. And I played sports in elementary school, middle school, and high school. But I had made a decision that my playing days were over. Right, I'm 5'9", 180 pounds, and I love to play football. But football players are pretty big. But I'm also a basketball player. So part of my story is at the University of Washington, some friends of mine kept encouraging me to go try out for the junior varsity, right? I said, no, I'm good. I'm good. I said, no, come on down, man. Come on, come on. I said, okay. And Terry, I went down there and I saw some of these same ball players on TV the year before, right?
Okay.
Just like you said, I saw these guys look bigger than life. But Terry, when I went down there, I said, you know what? These guys aren't that tough. So what I did was I tried it for the JV, made a team, and part of the success story was, and it happens, somebody got hurt on varsity, and so the coach decided to bring someone up. And there was a guy that was on scholarship, and I was a walk on. And because of what he felt my skill sets were, I got chosen for the traveling squad and in the college. Got a chance to play in Pauley Pavilion. Everybody knows that that's the mecca of college basketball. So I thought I had arrived, right? And so I got a chance to play against, I think it was Bill Walton and Gus Williams and some of the other great ball players. So that was a great opportunity for me to see that if I'm willing to put forth the effort, good things will happen.
Man, that's a great story. I know there's a JV squad in middle school and high school, but no one ever talks about the JV squad on the collegiate levels. You taught us the importance of believing in yourself, despite what your mind tells you, believe your spirit. Because your mind can be manipulated. I feel as though somebody put a calling on those individuals to in turn say to you, man, come on, man, you can do it, you can do it. All right, and you reluctantly did it. And a lot of times that's where the blessing is. The blessing is oftentimes in the areas that are unknown. So a lot of times people, they fear the unknown. You don't sound like somebody who fears the unknown. You walked in that direction and you allowed for you to be in receipt of the blessing.
I agree. So something came up, and just so you know, another fallacy, my language, that us as a culture sometimes embrace that we don't need outside help. I've had therapy, right? I think every Black person in America should be in therapy, by the way. That's another conversation, right? But one of the things my therapist, who was Black, he said, Delbert, you got two choices: either live in fear or with fear. So living in fear basically means that I'm so afraid I'm not going to. Living with fear says, like courage, is being afraid and doing it anyway. So that's been part of my mantra in terms of my life journey.
I so agree with that. And one of the best lessons that my father, he's taught me a lot. One of the best lessons that I carry with me to this day, my dad said to me, Delbert, if you start something, don't quit. And no matter what the situation is, if it's in my spirit to do it, no matter how difficult it may be, I'm going to continue to see it through, because I remember what my dad told me. I might have been 7 years old when he said this. He said, if you start something, don't quit. You know, I think if we hold on to that mindset and commit ourselves to what it is that we say we want to do. One of the things that we talk about on the podcast all the time, I'm sure our viewers and listeners, they've heard it a million times, is the importance of pursuing your passion. What are you passionate about? Why? Because whatever it is you're doing, it's going to come with challenges. Why not endure those challenges with something that you actually enjoy doing? You have to work. You got to get a job doing something. You got to make some money. Why not enjoy doing it? Or find a way to put the financial resources in your pocket so that you can fuel what it is you may want to do, what it is you're passionate about. Because you're right, man, especially people of color, we internalize a lot of different things. And maybe the job doesn't give us the value as we see ourselves to have. Maybe our friends and family, they don't give us the value that we see ourselves to have. But when you accomplish something, and you know this from sports, when you accomplish something, it does something to your spirit. It makes you feel a certain level of worth that, man, look at what I accomplished. So I think that's something that more of us need to embrace.
Thank you. You know, I often say, people talk about you got to work harder than the next person and all that. And there's some truth to that. But what I also agree with you is that there's nothing wrong or bad about making a quality effort.
Okay.
And a lot of times we put our best foot forward, it's going to be rewarded in some fashion. And so one of the things, you know, my work is primarily with pre-K to 12th grade Black and brown students, but I also educate white students as well. But one of the things I share with them is that if it's something you want bad enough, you got to be willing to make some sacrifices. What sacrifices are you willing to make for the end game? I talk to high schoolers and say, who here wants to own a car? Who here wants to buy a house? I said, who here has a job?
No
Nobody raised
hand.
their hand, right? And it's
Right.
it's just putting things into context. It's great to want, and you have a right to want those things, but there must be a sacrifice. So I asked the question, said, some of you guys play video games, don't you? Yeah, I said, great. So hypothetically, if you play video games an hour a day, are you willing to move that time down to a half an hour and spend a half an hour on your goals? Because
Hmm.
something has to be, there's got to be some give and take in terms of what you want to accomplish in life, I feel.
I couldn't agree more. And a lot of times, instead of an hour a day, they're spending 8 hours a day
I was
playing
being
these
generous.
playing
Yes.
yeah, right, playing these video
Well,
games.
this is dangerous, man. You know, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it's a big distraction even for me. And so, one of the things that I really try to emphasize when I talk to children, young adults, is that you're capable of doing a lot more than you think you can. You talked about this here, but what if you were to challenge yourself, right? And so I asked the students, okay, great, who here has a C average in school? They raised their hand. I said, well, are you a C student? They said, no. Right, you're not a C student. Are you putting forth the effort to be a B student? So I just try to encourage them with little things like that.
Man, those kids are blessed to have you and all of your
Mhm.
wisdom. So after you graduated from University of Washington,
No, I did not. So thank you for saying. No, I didn't. My journey was I went to University of Washington, and then a friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, there's this new company in town. You should go apply for this company." And I did, and I wound up getting hired. And when I got there, I saw another opportunity. So I told myself, you know what? I want to be a buyer. I want to be in the procurement department. And it's not a secret. I was the first Black hired in the procurement department of Costco Wholesale, which is a
mm,
billion-dollar company, by the way, that's based here in Seattle. So in my 90-day probationary period, I got promoted from, have you been to Costco before, Terry?
absolutely.
So when you come in, they check your ID and stuff.
Hmm.
They click you. That was my job in the beginning. So I
Okay.
went from there straight to the corporate office and within 90 days.
Man.
So for me, wanting to do better has always been something that's been part of my spirit, and I've been able to do that. But I stayed at Costco for about 11 years, and being one of the early employees, you learn a lot. You're pretty close knit. You really having fun. But like most companies, things start to grow. They start to grow more impersonal, and it no longer felt like it was something that I wanted to do. So I resigned. I
Hmm.
resigned after about 11 years because I didn't know this, Terry, but God had a better plan, right? So he said, Delbert, what terms do you want to leave on? Yours or mine? So, so I resigned, right? It's close to six figures. And, you know, I resigned because primarily I never completed my college degree, right? So I've always been goal orientated. So I said, this is what you do. You got this corporate experience. You made them a lot of money, which I did, but I wanted to go back and fulfill a dream of mine, right? So I said, well, why don't you um, resign, go find a job part time, and then go back to school. Well, Terry, one of the challenges during the interview process, most of the interviewers said, Delbert, you're a great interview, but I can't hire you because you may take my job. I said, I said, no, I don't want your job. I just want a part time job so I can go back to school, right? Didn't happen. So what I did, I wound up working for a temp agency, Terry. And then from there, because my work ethic, I got hired full time and wound up working for this company for a given period of years. But what I did was I worked full time, went to school at night, and finished up and got my degree from Antioch College in Seattle campus. And I think it's international social justice. But Terry, I graduated 40 years after I graduated from high school. So I
Mm.
tell people all the time, it's not who finished first or last, it's who finishes, right?
Hmm.
So by the time that I got my college degree, I already had a business, which is a travel museum, had a full-time job. So I was pretty much in a position for the next transition, which is what? Being my own boss, being my own entrepreneur.
Thinking about starting your own business? Make it real with Shopify, the all-in-one platform trusted by millions to sell online and in person. Whether it's merch, art, or digital goods, Shopify gives you the tools to build, grow, and succeed. And here's the best part. When you sign up using the affiliate link in our show notes, you're supporting Prepare for Takeoff and starting your business off right. Click the link and start your free trial today. I'm glad that you share with that level of transparency, because the average person would just assume, myself included, okay, he went to the University of Washington, he graduated all those years ago. But you said, no, my journey had twists and turns, zigs and zags, and I had to make my way through that. But more importantly, you always continue to have that steadfast belief in what it is you wanted to accomplish, and you never lost your sight of that goal.
Yeah.
And like you said, the key thing is you got to keep going. And
yeah, but there was another zag in there, man. I'm in recovery, which I think is very important, right? And recovery from cocaine addiction. And what I've learned, I'm not ashamed to say that, because that's not who I am. That's not who I was. I had to start thinking about what was going on in my life that made me think I need to do that because of some other reasons. So what I've learned is, addictions are nothing but a manifestation of other things, right? So I had to get down to causes and conditions. And it went back to childhood, man. Some of that stuff, some of that old childhood stuff, that old messaging, right? That you never be anything, you won't be enough. And so when things didn't go my way, then I turned to substances. And so today I celebrate over 20 years of sobriety.
Congratulations, my brother. That's an accomplishment. I know that a lot of people that are in recovery, they say it's one day at a time, one hour by hour, minute by minute.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said is so spot on and true. It's a manifestation of something else. What the addiction is, it can be a gambling addiction. It can be a food addiction. The addiction, fill in the blank, what you're going to have in front of it. But the addiction isn't really the issue. The issue is what's causing the addiction. Why do you feel the need to go down that, to self-medicate? Why do you feel that need? And I know people, there are things that are more socially acceptable, like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that people can develop as a form of self-medication. But you're right. We have to, no matter what it is, we got to dig deep and get to our core so we can be our best self. I've heard it more times than not. You're not going to get any points for playing hurt. So, until you're ready to go in the game, they're going on our list. So when you hit that field and you can be the best version of yourself, is well worth it. You mentioned that you're able to build this business and you have this traveling museum, things of that nature. So what prompted you to launch the Unspoken Truths?
Well, thank you. And it just goes back to my childhood. I told you I was born in 1954, which is the year of Brown v. Board of Education, but it's also the height of Jim Crow, right? And so I didn't have Black history in elementary, middle, or high school. On my birth certificate, it probably says Negro or colored.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I knew, right? Now looking back, it was basically how people had chosen for me to identify. Going to University of Washington was transformative because in most college settings, professors can teach what they choose to teach based on whatever discipline it is. And it just so happened taking Black studies was a prerequisite at the University of Washington for all incoming freshmen. And that's where I learned that, for the most part, that we were never slaves, Terry. We were enslaved. On top of that, these people called Africans have done some amazing things throughout the world that no one is telling me about. And so I became so invested in learning. That's why you see this library behind me. I'm a researcher. I cannot learn enough. And so that started me on my journey of self-discovery. So now I went from a Negro of color to I'm Black and I'm proud, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've been a collector of called Black Americana, and I pulled a book out just so people can see that collecting is a big deal in certain genres. And collecting could be Ancient Mama Salt and Pepper Shakers or Cream of Wheat labels. They have been using our images to capitalize on our images for decades, right? So this is just there's this big collecting community out there, people collecting things, and so that's where I started. But I went to a show in I think it's Secaucus, New Jersey, and I'm in Seattle. And by the way, there's about 6 Black people up here. I'm one of them, right? There's not a lot of us up here, right? And so when I went back to New Jersey and I saw an auditorium full of collectors, Black collectors, I had no idea. And one of the gentlemen there, which is very important, his name is Danny Drain, out of Walterboro, South Carolina. He had one of the largest collections of slave shackles, personally, one of the largest. And me, I'm a collector now, right? So I'm buying things out of curiosity. I said, Danny, I want one of those. He said, man, you buy one, I'm going to take care of you. And I bought a pair of slave shackles. Now listen to this. This is how God works. I bought a pair of slave shackles. I went over in the tunnel in New York and went to Harlem. Everywhere I traveled for this company, I used to go to the antique stores. That's where I love to hang out. Well, in this one store, there was an authentic Ku Klux Klan robe. And the robe actually made the New York paper because she had it on display in her storefront, right? So I bought it. Now, I don't know why, because I left there. Listen to this. I left there with a pair of shackles, a Klan robe, and a deck of invention flashcards. True story. Come back to Seattle, say, man, what am I going to do with this? Because most collectors have things in their home, right? And it's just one of the things that we do. No one sees them but people that come by. But something touched my spirit about, if I was transformed by being exposed to new information, how might that impact some other people? So one thing led to another, and I got reconnected to the African part of my identity. Because up until that point, I didn't know anything about African artifacts. And so one thing led to another, and I developed this chronological timeline of American history through an Afrocentric lens. That's so important. I don't teach Black history. I don't teach African American history. I teach American history. Why? So I can see me, you, and the story of American history.
That's great, man. Where are you teaching that? Is it from K through
Pre-K,
okay,
12th grade. That's
okay.
my sweet spot. Because Terry, I'm under the belief that the sooner you expose children to the truth, they can start developing their own beliefs and their own feelings, right? And so that's what the majority of my work is. But I'm being asked to work more and more with institutions, municipalities, and colleges. Why? We've all been bamboozled about history for decades, right? I'm a re-education person. I'm a relearning. I'm going back and doing that research to shed a light some of the stories that's not being told behind the curtain of American history. A lot of our children, young adults, have a world view of 3 or 4 block radius. So a lot of times you are what you hear or what you see. But as far as having an imagination and being curious, a lot of that sometimes is stifled based on what they're exposed to. So one of the things that my museum, I believe, does, it gives them opportunity to really start seeing themselves through a healthy lens. So my work is really around identity development and self-actualization. The first part of the museum is called Mother Africa. And in that section, I have primary resources, and I actually brought a few. This is a beautiful bronze piece, right? Primary resource. Here's another piece. This is wood. This is a mask, right? So my museum is 90% hands-on. Why? When you go to a museum, what do they tell you most of the time? Don't touch. What I've learned, though, is that a lot of people and children learn through different modalities, right? So in my museum, I'm a storyteller. You can touch things and things you can read. It's not a prerequisite to know how to read to learn. So I create a space for all learners. And so back to the beginning of the museum, Mother Africa, where I show STEM, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, add the A, it's STEAM. I show those disciplines coming out of the continent of Africa in terms of math, terms of metallurgy, in terms of aeronautics. So all of a sudden, the eyes open up. No one's ever shared with them that within them is this greatness. And here's an example of it. Another thing I think is our children are not served in schools. They're not being exposed to subject matter that gets them excited and engaged. So my museum not only holds their attention, it gets them to start asking questions and wanting to know more. And so Mother Africa starts with, I have the second section is called American Chattel Slavery, where I have authentic primary resources. It's an actual, I brought these out just for you, Terry. These
Okay.
are, this is for an adult, this is for a young child. These are actual restraints won by our ancestors. And so I shared the story that I learned that we were never slaves, we were enslaved, which is a big difference in terms of consciousness, right? But the other
Right.
piece is they don't teach about the resistance and the resilience of that time period. And so I also brought an item here. Can you hear that? It's called a rattle, runaway collar. So they used to put these on our ancestors, right? Put things on the end. You can hear them, right? So they can always have an idea where we are. What do? We put mud on, brother, and we ran anyway, right? We resisted every chance we got, man.
Right.
So when I start to share with them that this is not who you are. This is not who you are. This is what was done to you, right? So I put the responsibility back on the other person. So all of a sudden, Black kids can't believe that we were treated so inhumane. Because in a lot of cases, no one ever shares with them the real history in a way for they can start to understand that they have responsibility now, Terry, based on the shoulders that you and I are on, and we have an opportunity to honor them by doing our darn best. I teach Jim Crow. I don't teach civil rights. I teach Jim Crow. They help me talk about the racial caste system that came out of the enslavement period. Went from slave codes to black codes. So they just found another way to process. So the last section is a self-actualization section. So I show actual items, everyday items that we use that were invented by us. Ice cream scoop, the pencil sharpener, the gas mask. So all of a sudden, these students' eyes are open and now they're standing more upright, Terry, because now they have a firm understanding that's this identity piece about who they are and what they can accomplish. They're clearer now about what their role is in terms of being an agent of change.
That is so, innovative for you to take these kids down that journey, show them their origin story, and show them this is what was done to you. Our ancestors, they weren't slaves, they were enslaved. These were things that are done to them. And despite all of that, I've heard on multiple occasions, whether it's reels on Instagram or things on YouTube, they were talking about all of the different things that were done to African Americans. And despite all of those things, despite the wealth gap as it relates to how free labor that allowed people that didn't look like us, that enslaved us, they were allowed to prosper. But not only did they steal us from our motherland, they came here and stole the land that were being occupied by Native Americans.
She did.
And then what they've done is they stole the history and they've turned it into his story. So they want you to believe only what they want you to believe, what they want you to believe. You see what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, they want you to see yourself in a certain capacity, no different than in slavery times. They wanted you to be subdued, distracted, whatever. Because if I can control your psyche, I can control you.
Absolutely. And he who tells the story controls the narrative, Terry. So I'm telling the story, I'm telling the narrative. So people ask me, say, Delbert, why do you call it American history? You know what I tell them, Terry? Because I can. It's not rocket scientist, but I'm a spinner. I like to use language that's being used and create some curiosity around it. Because when I call my work American history, people turn their heads. So, what do you mean American history? We have been told that, how about told and shown that America is synonymous with whiteness?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. That's somebody else's story. But I want to share with you that our ancestors built this joint here, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
free labor. And so we have just as much as right of anybody to call ourselves American and say that we're patriotic to what we've created versus what was been stolen from us.
Right. We came here and we built everything. And it shouldn't surprise anybody that that translated to us inventing everything. We were the labor force. In order to labor, you need tools in order to accomplish the goal in mind. And
Yeah.
whether you're talking electricity, whether you're talking the phone, whatever, it was always a brother in there that did all of the heavy lifting, but someone else got the credit.
Yeah, there's some sisters too, by the way. But make sure they say
As
sister
well.
name. Why wouldn't people that did this not do this? Why
Right.
not? I show with children, this is who you are, and this is what you're capable of accomplishing. Jim Crow had two things in mind: keeping you from who you are and what you can accomplish.
Mm.
So, yes, I'm determined to make sure that I do my part on helping children, young adults better understand who they are. I never talk about the word power, I talk about empowerment. So, how do I develop? And Terry, you and I know this. We navigate spaces on a regular basis. People don't look like us, but we've learned how to develop these skill sets to be
Mm-hmm.
able to not just survive but thrive.
When we come in those rooms, I think that there was a time in which I'm sure because you're my elder. So I'm sure there was a time in which speak proper. That meant speak as white as you possibly can so that you don't pose a threat. So they know that I'm well behaved and I mean you no harm. But think about it. This is the example that I give, Delbert. Imagine if somebody came to your side of Detroit that wasn't melanated, but he came there trying to talk black and nobody knew him and he was moving like he was black and he was doing the things you would think, wait a minute, is this some kind of satire? Like, are you kidding me, man? Run him off the block. Well, what happens when you come in that boardroom and you're whiter than the white people? They're looking at you as like, okay, you're a watered down version of who you should be. So therefore, I'm not going to take you serious because you are trying to be something that you're never going to be. You're never going to be me. So you're the knockoff Jordans. But I think you'll have far better results if you step in your authenticity and be prideful about who you are. Don't be disrespectful. Respect everybody's culture, but make sure they respect yours as well.
Terry, thank you. And there's two things that's part of my identity in terms of in public is a kufi and an unk. People will tell you, a lot of people have never seen my head like yours, and I got one of those too. I'm proud of it. But I wear a kufi all the time because what it does, it keeps me connected in a way to where I know for a fact I'm covered.
I
Mm-hmm.
like
That's
that,
important.
man.
It's important. Yeah, very
Yeah.
important.
No, so let me ask you a question because I know you said it ain't but six of y'all up there. How how are they receiving all this work you're doing that is really elevating us as a people, elevating our mindset, but you're not in a highly saturated
Mm-hmm.
area of as it relates to people of color. How are the people that aren't melanated? How are they in receipt of that information?
For the most part, let me just say this: in Seattle, this is considered a blue state, whatever that means, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time that we've been oppressed by both parties. So, Republican and Democrat, it don't matter to me. So up here, they're more quote unquote liberal white people. So in some cases, they're a little bit more open to new information, but I also say they're probably more racism is so subversive here than anywhere else, because at least in the South, Terry, people let you know how they think and feel about you, right? Up here is a little bit different. So I haven't received any negative press. I haven't received any open pushback, but I know for a fact there's a lot of white people that are uncomfortable with the information, because part of my work is really re-educating them in a way. Now, you feeling shame and guilt, let's talk about that. No, it wasn't you. It may have been your ancestors. But if you're not willing to, in my view, start to do some work around that piece, you become even more harmful to people like me. Because you shame and you guilt and you scared, then it's not uncommon that when white people get scared, black people suffer.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, you heard in the whole white nationalism movement, if you will, well, you're making our children feel guilty about being white, making them feel guilty about their association with what people who look like them did. But there was there was nothing said about when our kids were made to feel the same way. And I don't even think we're making them feel that way. We're educating them on this is what was done. This was a horrible atrocity, and we want to see to it that it doesn't happen again. We hear about the Holocaust all the time, and we've been told that story. It was atrocious, and that's something that is a part of their history, and it should be spoke about. And in Germany, all of the things that speak to Nazi Germany has been eradicated. Why can't we do the same thing in America? You can't say you can't do it. You can't say, oh, let's not talk about it. In Germany, they denounced all of what took place during those Nazi years. And they held those individuals accountable. And then as a result of which, Germany, it may be more conducive for people who look like you and I there than it is in some places in the United States. So you can't say it can't be done. It's being done in other places.
Yeah. They've modeled accepting responsibility. There are plaques and there are monuments to make sure that people don't forget. And so I agree 100%. I'm just not sure that America's ready to accept this responsibility in the harming, right? And so as a result of that, you'll constantly get this pushback. And I can't make you feel anyway. Those feelings you have that are coming from another place. Now, if you want to associate them with something I'm doing, fine. But don't share with me or say that I'm making your children feel a certain way. No, I'm not doing that.
If anything, you're educating their children so that they will be more conscientious of who not to become.
And thank you for saying that. And just the reality, I probably do more work in white schools than black schools because there's a majority of white students in Seattle. And what I also find is that they're very curious as well because they didn't know. And here's the thing, when we start talking about humanity, let's take race out of the equation. The question becomes, what would possess one human being to treat another human being this way? And that's what I'm really trying to get at. So how would you feel if somebody treated you this way? They say, well, no. How would you feel though? How would you feel? Give me a word. So, well, yeah, well, okay, great. So please respect the fact that because of what we've been exposed to as black and brown people, our feelings should be valued.
This episode of Prepare for Takeoff is brought to you in part by Riverside, the platform that I trust to record studio quality podcasts right from my laptop. With Riverside, I get crystal clear audio and 4K video. Plus, it's super easy to use. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Riverside helps your podcast sound amazing. Try it out for yourself. Click the affiliate link in our show notes and start recording like a pro with Riverside. I believe that, in my humble opinion, the fear that people have about people of color developing two things, consciousness, and as a result, that connection to not just people in Africa, but people in other melanated populations, whether you're talking the Hispanic community, whether you're talking people from other communities where a lot of the same things that was done to us, they may not have been enslaved, but colonialism was global.
Oppression.
Oppression was
Yeah. Yeah.
global.
Yeah.
So now we're talking not just in the South, but everywhere in the world. They have made it so that things that look a certain way is seen to be superior. And if you don't look that way, if there's no association between you and what that is, fill in the blank, then you don't have the same value. So there's more that we have in common as people of color. And this is what I will say, and I'm saying that for a reason. You're a very well-read brother. I can see this in the backdrop alone. But I forget the year. At one point in time, there was no thing called the white race. It was Spanish, Portuguese, whatever the case may be. They realized, you know what? There's power in numbers. Why are we showing up as a fragmented group? I don't care if you're from the Czech Republic. We're all white. Why can't we do the same thing? We're all black and brown.
Yeah, and so you bring up a very important point. One of the things that I'm wanting to do as well is to do an exhibit that's strictly for black and brown people. Why? Because anti-blackness is a big deal, right? And it basically means that I've been told a story about you, Native American, Asian, Latino. And so I start to internalize and I start to have a belief about you and don't even know you. So one of the things I want to do is create a healthy space so we can talk about the stories that we've been told about each other. You hit the nail on the head. If we can come into a room and be vulnerable and transparent, we'll find out we have more in common than differences. And we all, in some kind of ways, have been oppressed by the same group. And they have developed these stories that we tell each other that keeps them elevated.
It's a matter of how can I control their consciousness? And we've heard it a million times since we were kids, divide and conquer. If I can divide these groups, they did it during slavery. We had people who worked in the field, people who worked in the house. We had overseers, and we had people that went out with the slave catchers. So with all that being said, we always had people that they value self-preservation more so than they did the greater good for all of us. So now I think the oppressor, he fed into that. Okay, well, if you want to be okay, then tell me what it is I need and I'll take care of you and your family. No different than in the boardroom. Okay, listen, I'll give you that promotion, but just know you have to fire that entire department. And what comes with that. I really believe that history just repeats itself and it's a revolving door.
Yeah. So Terry, that there, let me tell you something. So Mark Twain says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. The rhyming of history. So what you see going on, you're right, Terry. What you see going on now in Washington isn't new. It's just on a whole nother level, right? But the reality is we've been here before. And Terry, we've had bad kings before. Us as melanated people, right? And we're really survivors and thrivers. But the reality is we must want to come together under a common goal and a common cause, because that's where our real strength comes from.
When they say knowledge of self, wisdom and understanding, man, you are the embodiment of that. I'm certain that our viewers and listeners have got so much from this conversation. As we close out, I want to give you the opportunity to leave our viewers and listeners with 3 things that you feel will help them prepare for takeoff.
Tell yourself every day, I am worthy. Number 1. Number 2, spend time on what your passion and purpose is. And number 3, do some kind of service work for somebody else. We're born in a capitalist society, which means what? Delbert, take, want, mine. I do this often. I call it a random act of kindness, right? Because I have to really work at this, right? So I will go ask somebody, hey, can I take your grocery cart back to the store, right? Especially my elders, right? So I constantly want to do service to my community because that's where my heart lies.
I'm sure that our viewers and listeners, they don't want to just be limited to the wisdom that you share with us on the podcast. How can they get more of this wisdom, man? Whether it's on your website, whether it's them finding you on social media, email, whatever you feel comfortable with sharing.
Well, I thought you'd never ask. I have a website. It's www.unspokentruths, plural.org. I'll say it again, www.unspokentruths.org. You can reach me through there, and I would love to partner with you to change the world. I'm going to say this in closing. At the beginning and the end of the day, all you are is your word.
Mm-hmm.
Your yeses got to be yes, and your no's got to be no's. That's integrity.
If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yes, yes. So, Terry, until the lion tells his tale, the hunt will always glorify the hunter. And we are the lions now telling our story by your medium and by mine as well. So I appreciate you so much.
You are about people who look like us. And your work speaks to that. And you are unapologetically who you are based on how you show up in a room, and you make people respect who you are. I respect that, man. And you're an elder that I look to as inspiration.
Terry, thank you. I've retired from one job. I'm looking at retiring again. So I'm actually preparing the museum to pay it forward, like the Sankofa bird. In order to move forward, you got to look back. So I want to make sure that I lay a foundation for the next generation to continue this work.
Whatever we can do to make that work continue forward, whatever resources we have at our disposal, just know that we're here to help. And whatever I have as a resource, whatever I have in my network, my resources are your resources, my brother.
You know what? I believe that. And Terry, thank you so much. And I know this is just but a beginning. So I appreciate us both taking the time here.
Appreciate you as well. And I also appreciate our viewers and listeners, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you're watching us on Spotify or you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every week we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals or rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Delbert, thanks for joining us, my brother.
Thank you. And just remember, everybody listening, you are worthy.